Okay. This is a meeting of the Freeport Withdrawal Committee at the Freeport High School Conference Room Thursday, May 1, 2014 at 6:36 p.m. And in attendance, we have Rich Grand Prix, Kate Werner, Peter Murray, and Dennis King is hopefully on his way. Usually he's a little bit late on Thursday, so hopefully he's coming. First item on the agenda is to waive the reading of the minutes and accept them as written for April 10th, 2014. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, any discussion about that? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, no opposed. Meetings minutes are accepted. Next on our agenda is to talk about the visioning forum, and we have a short agenda tonight, so hopefully we'll click through it pretty quickly. But I thought it would be good to go over the visioning forum, talk about what we heard. We got our report from Pam. I have a bill from Pam that we need to settle.
No problem.
And then I got all the raw materials from her as well, from the thing that we just put into our giant binder of doom.
Well, giant two binders of
Dual,
doom.
dual binders of doom, yep. But what do people think?
I had a great time. I got a chance to talk with folks that I don't always see. I heard
There were a lot of new faces there.
Yeah, I heard a lot of really good things from folks. There were some folks who were skeptical about, the evening, but got into the spirit and enjoyed themselves. And I think, the only, I don't even call it dissension, but the only question that we really didn't get answers to, and people pointed out at the end was we really didn't get it, so how many kids do you think should be in the school? But I think what we got instead was some guidance around the finance. And that really will help to inform us going forward. Really comes down to that. I think we've got some good information, even though we don't have a number.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't thinking that we were going to get a number out of it, but rather
Neither was I.
some kind of signal, of some kind of qualitative signal. And one of the things I was looking out for was people saying, we really need a whole lot of students in there, right? We need a lot of kids. We need football team. We need all this, all the accoutrement. And quite frankly, I know that it was discussed at most of the tables, but it was not an overriding signal. And so I noticed that that signal was not coming through strong and loud. And I think what I heard was a lot of the kind of expected enthusiasm for richness of offerings, for diversity of curriculum, for excellence of teaching staff, all of those sorts of things. And then I also heard kind of subtly a little nostalgia in a few comments for kind of something that's not readily apparent in the way things are currently going. And I don't know how to quantify that, and I don't want to turn this into and I don't want to insult or be insulting at all, but there were several comments that were like, wow, we really had something, and I can't find it anymore,
I think to put it into, I guess, kind of words as I heard it, because I heard the same comments. Where there was people felt welcome, they felt when it was part of just Freeport, this school was used by everybody. All you had to do is make a call, and you'd have, if you want if you needed a room tonight, just come on down. We'll put you in this room or that room, what have you. So the whole community used this, regardless of what the meeting was about or what group it was, and they felt like it was their school. And I think that they don't always feel that way now. And some of that's because of policy. Some of it's because it's actually being managed by another entity rather than the actual community. And I'm not trying to hit anybody with a stick, but I think that that's what they're talking about.
One of the great points I thought that were brought up was the importance of, and this is something I think speaks to what you were saying, Pete, about what we may have lost in some respects, or people feel we may have lost, some personal, individualized learning, a sense of pride and excellence in the school system and at all levels and for all kids. No matter what the learner is and no matter where they're going to head after school, that there was a place for them here and they felt like they belonged collaboration between students and teachers and the community, whether it be parents in the community or the business community. They felt it was important for them to measure a school by the relationship between the teachers and the students and the administration rather than by the number of AP classes necessarily that were offered, which I thought was fantastic, and the importance of having the teachers valued and having a say in what was going on. That was something that they felt like was really important to them. And the sense of just the whole community being a part of the educational process and that being so critical to having everyone engaged in that process.
Did you guys hear any discussion other than, I think all three speakers talked about it at one point or another, about, I think Tom kind of said it as plain as you can. It doesn't matter if you get 29, 39, or 49 teachers in here. They should be the very best that you can find anywhere. And I heard that from, some discussion at tables and from some folks as I talk to them after. And I think that it's easy to say that until you look at the mechanics of how you get there. But I think that was something that really did seem to resonate with folks. And I think that goes back to how many AP courses or how many honors courses or what have you that you have isn't as critical as they get everything out of the classes they are taking and that they're fully engaged.
Yeah. And one of the other things I think that some of the panelists were talking about is how education, the nature of education, the way we organize education, the way we pay for education, all of this stuff is changing dramatically, right? The way we regulate education, we're getting all these standards coming out, we're getting this idea that we're going to break down the walls and we're going to have school choices. Some people are battling for that. We've got charter schools coming online. We've got superintendent's agreements being used a lot. We've got technology coming online. My son takes a course with 15 other kids from around the U.S., on computer science, and he never met these people, but he's engaged with them in a computer science course. And so I think all of those kinds of dynamics create a maelstrom of activity and change and navigating that in a way that we can deliver the excellence of education and taking advantage of some of those things, like taking advantage of maybe perhaps an increased motivation to cooperate. We've had really great responses when we talk to Yarmouth or Brunswick and so forth, but hey, could we think outside the box and do some collaborative stuff? Is there a way that technology can enable us to work with the Baxter folks in some really interesting collaborative nature, or some with Yarmouth or Brunswick or other schools? So I think that was another theme that percolated up a few times throughout the evening was.
And not just schools, but with business. We have a lot of cutting edge business. I think composites are really big in the state of Maine. There's a lot of folks that are right there at the edge. They're leading the charge rather than following it. I mean, there's still opportunity for kids to land with both feet on the ground. And one of the things that comes out of that is when they decide to go to college, they know where and why. They're fully motivated when they get there. So I mean, there's all kinds of advantages that way.
Yeah. So anyway, it was, and one of for me, the thing that was amazing was the turnout, right? I mean, over 100 people, and we packed the room, and it was.
Break out every table they had.
Yeah, we had to break out all the tables at the last minute. Everyone was unfolding tables. The guy was, worried about the fire code. And,
walking up and down, making sure you can walk through.
Yeah, it was really something else, and it was a testament, I think, to the energy in the community around this issue and this feeling, this sense of. And I tried to think, why is it that they came out for that meeting and not other meetings that we've had about school stuff? And
it was Lindsay's food.
It probably was spanked up, but it was fantastic. But it was also a sense of I think owning this decision that we're going to make as a community, and that's a big. Everybody realizes it's a big decision, and it's not going to be something we can take lightly. And folks seem ready to engage and own that decision. And people were there from, who are not in favor of withdrawal, and people are there who are really in favor of withdrawal. And
didn't have kids.
People didn't have kids. People who are
ages,
teachers. People who are not teachers. it was an amazing cross section, and I'm really excited about that. And I hope that we can continue that momentum going forward, no matter what happens in the future. That kind of level of engagement continues, and you know, helps guide the whatever structure we end up with for the school governance. So I think we talked about a couple of things that we took out individually, and I think for us it was really helpful from a general context setting thing, but not from specifics, as you said, Rich. We're not going to get, here's the number we want, here's what, you know, the curriculum we want, here's the thing, but from a sense of where the comfort lies in the room and what the priorities were, and that can help us as we try to structure these arrangements, and will inform our decisions even if it's not directly connected. So I thought it was a successful evening, and you know, as I said to someone at one point, you know, it was an experiment. You know, here we are, we're trying to figure this out. There are 4 of us, we're trying to figure this stuff out, and we had to do something, right? We wanted to do something, so we're trying something, right? And maybe it worked, maybe it doesn't work. You know, the future, only history will tell, but
we got a lot of information.
We got a lot of information, a lot of dialogue and engagement, and I want to keep that going. So whatever we can do to keep that going is critical. Good. On the final piece here, Pam did an excellent job, I thought, and she ran the evening well, and everything was like clockwork, and nice summarization at the end. So I feel like that was money well spent. And
do we have an executive summary?
We have, yeah, I emailed it around. Yep.
Okay.
It
good.
was emailed.
I will. The reason I say that, Tuesday night we're going to be attaching, putting $50,000 aside, because that's what the tech council voted to be putting that aside, and that's where these bills will be paid from.
Okay.
Or that account is where these bills will be paid from, and I'd like to make sure the council gets a copy of the executive summary, so I'll have copies.
It's in your email box.
Okay.
If that's good enough, you can forward it to Peter and have him put it on the.
Yeah, that way they'll have it in their packets. Yeah.
Great.
And I again, we're taking that action on Tuesday night. And I was really happy. The other thing I wanted to say, we had a lot of counselors there, you know, they were. Someone called and said, "Well, should I really go?" And I said, "Well, yeah."
Why not? Why wouldn't you go?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? You're a part of this community. I mean, even if you've decided you don't want to try, you don't want to be at a point where you're trying to influence anything, just come and listen. And I think they all participated in working with different groups of people. They heard things firsthand. So I mean, I think it worked out really well. So I'm glad they did come. No,
it was a great evening. So that's the last piece of business I had there. Does anybody else want to comment on the evening?
No, I never would have guessed we'd have 100 people.
I was astonished. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. Yeah.
We go for 200 next time.
Yeah, next time we'll have to get a bigger venue. I think we will have to get a bigger venue. We'll have to do it in the gym or something.
We need a bigger boat.
That's a good problem to have.
It is.
All right, next on the agenda is public comment. We have Jerry Antle here from the public. Jerry, would you like to say a comment?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think the session itself was great. I was there in attendance and participated, and just great feedback. You know, some of the folks at my table specifically, I had a table of about 8 people, and, you know, they all moved here for that sense of community and kind of feel that the past few years that was lost. So I think there's, you know, from my perspective, it feels like the town is kind of trying to regain something that, you know, we used to have but don't have anymore. And, you know, me moving here about, you know, 10 years ago now and having 2 kids in the school system, you know, that's why I chose to get involved in this issue, was the fact that, you know, I think there's folks in town now that are, you know, feel like we've gone on a trajectory that maybe isn't as positive as it used to be. And, you know, it's affecting who moves to town, and, you know, and, you know, a lot of those families that used to chose Freeport aren't anymore. So I think there's definitely, regardless of what happens, there's a lot of constructive work that can go on. But I think it was a great night. Participation was among the public was great. And I feel that, you know, the objectives you guys set out to accomplish were definitely accomplished. So thanks to you guys for putting on the event and doing a great job coordinating it.
Thanks to you for giving us a hand along the way, because, you know, many hands make for light work. I was just reading, I have some notes here from the other night, Pete, if you want, I kind of bring you guys up to speed a little bit on our meeting with the Pound and Durham Selectmen.
Why don't we do that? Yep.
Yep.
So not on the agenda, but I think we should probably generally have an agenda item that says chit chat or something, right?
Yeah.
General
Or, you know,
updates or whatever, yeah.
Or even things that you may be hearing from people that, you know, that make you think.
Mhm.
You know, one of the things we spent some time with them talking about how we might work together on things. First of all, I want to say that it wasn't a cordial evening. It was one of those where people were real comfortable. We talked about a lot of things. I mean, it was always, until we got to talking about schools, it was the big elephant in the room. But we talked about, you know, how we might be able to work together with police to help them with, because we currently have interlocal agreements with them on police, the fire, and what have you. We talked about the library. I mean, a lot of the kids have library cards because they're in the RSU, but the parents don't. So we talked about, is there some way to, you know, to maybe make Freeport's library available to them? And Tim Giddings said the last time we talked about it several years ago, you know, Beth made an offer that was incredible, and there just wasn't any, there didn't seem to be any support. But he said now that we're deeper into this RSU and a lot more people in there, he said it may have changed, so maybe it should be a warrant item this year for him. So there, you know, it was a really positive meeting that we had. We talked about you know, finance and where we can help each other one way or another. One of the things that came out of that was grant writing. You know, and you know, sometimes there's one of the selectmen who will write grants, or there may be one person in the town that will write grants. And he said, you know, if you guys, we all know that we get better credit and better opportunity in grants if we're collaborating with communities around us. So he said, maybe working with, because Donna writes a ton of them here, and when she needs experience from a particular department head, she, you know, we pull that from them. So we said, you know, if there's a way we can do that, we gladly would work together to help, because most of those things benefit all three towns anyway. You know, we talked about public works and different things like that, and we're already working together with them. I mean, it's like sometimes you see a truck backed up to the salt shed. Can I borrow a couple of salt? Sugar. I mean, yeah. But so I mean, we're working together that way, especially when salt's scarce and you know they can't deliver or what have you. So, so it was a good discussion around that. We talked about recycling and how that works too. So, and these are all things that they had questions or suggestions or ideas around. So we're going to follow up on them in the future. And we're in fire. One of the things we talked about briefly was a fire district. And so they said, well, it's kind of like an RSU, isn't it? So, well, the difference is you're not instructed by the governor how to form it. You know, you start with a clean piece of paper and you figure out what works, and then you put that agreement together. But one of the things that happens is, especially if there's financial benefit, I mean, if you can put a fire district together and the ISO rating in the community drops, people save $100 to $200 on fire insurance. I mean, that's a substantial savings. And at that point, it's like, well, even if it costs us a little more, it's not going to cost us that much more. So how do we do this so we can, you know, provide better public safety? So we'll probably have some more discussion around a lot of those. We did agree to get together again, you know, just as the group of us. We also agreed that we are going to ask the RSU to have a workshop with us, whether it's our workshop or their workshop or whatever. We didn't want to just be an agenda item where we were invited to, you know, comment with the public and then, you know, get kind of dismissed and thanks for coming. You know, we wanted it to be a kind of a give and take, a little bit of question and answer, you know, trying to understand. And largely that was driven by the discussion around what the budget looks like. And nobody wanted to make, you know, really strong comments because a lot of people hadn't had a chance to review it. And we really were, one of the questions we asked, and I'm sure that you'll hear about it, was, is there some sort of an executive summary type of document that hits the high points of why, you know, where the places in the budget, where the money's going in the budget?
Every year there's an executive summary. Yeah,
so I think that, you know, something like that will help. And I think, you know, I don't think anybody's saying it should be smaller or it should be bigger. I think we just need to understand it because we struggle, you know, to stay at, you know, somewhere here, the CPI index, which is, you know, 1.2, 1.3, and all of us are there. But the school budgets are at 5 or 6. And so we're just we need to understand that. So anyway, but then we had some discussion around the RSU. And it was, the comments were pretty interesting. I mean, there weren't many, but, you know, one person said, you know, I feel kind of bad that, because we're all adults and most of us have been in our public positions for a while. And it seemed like when this came along, maybe we didn't take the opportunity to, to kind of step up and say, okay, is this really the best way to put this together? And if it is or isn't, or what have you, get the municipal governments involved, not just the RPCs, which were specifically appointed, people who, didn't necessarily have a ton of skills or has particular interest or what have you. So we did talk about that. And the question that came out of that was, is the RSU actually retrievable? What do you do with this if Freeport doesn't withdraw? Now what do you do? Because people clearly aren't happy with the way it is. So how do you make changes going forward? So that was one of the questions. There was a question about the withdrawal agreement and how do people get information. I said, well, all of the stuff that we have is on our website, and anything that's been tentatively agreed to is noted there also, so people can go and look and see where things are. The public's welcome at all of our meetings. If you have some thoughts or things, you can email us or Charlotte, saying what you want. But they were concerned that before we vote in November, that people have as accurate and balanced information as we can provide, so that they can make the right decision, not just a decision. And that was interesting to hear. And they said, any better communication that we can do, if we can find out a way to do that, would be good. So, but it was in general, it was a very good meeting. We had and people were perfectly happy to get together again.
That sounds great. I mean, it's probably been a long time coming to have the three town leadership groups get together and talk about ways to cooperate. So I'm glad that happened, Rich.
Yeah, and it was good. It was a good night. I think only one council didn't make it, and they were he had previous engagement in that, so it was good. It was a good evening.
That's great.
Thanks.
All right, so let's see, what else is going on?
Well, I guess I would have added another agenda item about the negotiating meeting. I
Right.
didn't put on there.
So
I wanted to do that.
we have a negotiating meeting next Thursday, the 8th, at 6:30 in the library.
It's Wednesday, correct?
It's Thursday.
Oh, it is Thursday.
Yeah,
So
because
it
Wednesday's a
plays
board meeting. We collided with the board meeting. In May, we have board meetings almost every week in an effort to communicate clearly about the budget. And so Thursday we agreed to meet with them in the library and do another round. The proposal from them informally after the meeting, or as the meeting was wrapping up, was that we I'm sorry, this thing's going to freak out here. Was that we bring attorneys to the next meeting, and I kind of downplayed that and said, let's, Michelle and us, we'll get together as a group, and you guys get together as a group, and then Michelle and I will get together and decide whether we're, communicate whether we're going to have meetings, attorneys there. I think the theory of bringing the attorneys is that we got to a point basically where we were wanting to make language changes and TA them, but neither party was really comfortable with language changes, or at least with respect to language changes that were proposed, without having it just been run by the attorney. We could probably tighten that loop if the attorneys were in the room. There were, 4 or 5 items that we agreed on, but we wanted language check from our attorneys. Exactly, yeah. So I think there's a series of stuff then there's a couple of items where we skipped rather long prose in the agreement, because there was one little section that had some kind of financial settlement aspect to it or something like that, and we didn't want to agree to that, so we skipped the whole section. But there's a lot of that probably was not controversial. And so with the lawyers in the room, we could probably figure out a way to structure it such that we pull out that piece and agree to not agree on that piece, but we could agree on the rest of that section and maybe move through that and get some more stuff agreed. And then there seems to be more meaty, a series of questions which we really wanted their input on, about things like whether the DOE whether it would be legitimate for the 10-year contract commitment for attendance to be split between multiple districts and other questions that the law did not specifically, law and the current set policies.
Interpretation of some of it.
Yeah, it doesn't specifically address, and how we could go about, examining and looking at those things. And so the attorneys could advise both of us together on that.
Or they could argue with each other.
Or they could, right, exactly. They could argue with each other, and that's what I want to avoid. I think with the attorneys coming is that it turns into a giant attorney, battle, and we end up sitting back just watching the cash register churn while they're duking it out. And I'd rather figure out a more efficient way if we can focus on the business issues, the school issues, and have the attorneys just be advising us. That would be great. I think Dan is a great guy, and I'm sure the folks on the other side are great too, but sometimes that happens. I've seen it happen in negotiations where you end up spending a lot of time in some very small corner of the law and not actually talking about the business constraints of or the business concerns of the discussion. So what do people think about having the attorneys? Do you think it's time to do that and try and see if we can have a productive meeting, move things forward, or do we want to we have 2 meetings in May?
If we're going to do that, I think we should all review.
3.
We either review it, or if somebody has, you got really good notes, and if you can note, give us a list of the items that we left for language for this, for whatever the easy ones. Let's make sure.
Got it.
Yeah, let's make sure we nail those down,
Mm-hmm.
and then put a throttle on these guys. We can start into some of the other items, but we're not going to pay you guys till 11 o'clock at night. We're going to be out of here.
We've got a hard stop at 9 by our rules of the road, right?
I think the approach we had last time was an excellent one, which is that we look for what we can agree on.
Mm-hmm.
What's easy and straightforward, and then we can figure out where the bumps are, and then we kind of set that aside. Potentially, if we feel like we can deal with it easily by just sort of hashing it out, fine. But if we feel like it's going to be something that's going to be time consuming and potentially a problem, then we can set it aside and then work on it on our own time, and then bring it back to the negotiating meeting when we have measurements of what we want.
Okay.
And then also there's another opportunity to deal with it in writing too, as a proposal.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we probably will spend a little bit of time caucusing on an item or two. And if we do get into the meat of some of these other issues, and we find ourselves, the attorneys find themselves disagreeing on what it means, I'm hoping that they'll at least be honest enough to say we really don't know what it means, and until the DOE tells us we really don't. We can say that it means this because I've read it and I think it's in English.
Mm-hmm.
But if in fact you don't know that, then let's just say so, and we'll get a ruling,
Mm-hmm.
rather than waste our time
Debating what it may or may not be, right?
Right, and I guess we need to figure out if there's at some point time when we might want to meet with the DOE, or some faction of us might want to meet with the DOE.
Go on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know anybody was in here.
Yep.
I'm sorry. We used this one this afternoon. I was going to take the paper down, but I guess I don't need to.
All right, thanks.
That's okay, thanks.
So I have speaking of DOE, I have a call into the DOE, and we played phone tag today. And the main reason I called them, well, we have several questions for them, and one of them is how do we engage with them to get some of these questions answered. But the other one was we had sent an email about 4 weeks ago asking for an extension, or 3 weeks ago asking for an extension of the date. We haven't heard back yet. Paula Graval did respond by voicemail and indicated that they have processed it and that we should get a letter in the mail. She did not indicate whether they had approved it or not, and she did not indicate whether it was email or snail mail. But presumably, if it was email, we would be getting it, and I don't see it yet. So I guess it's snail mail, and I don't know what address she would have used, except maybe Freeport Town Hall. So
Well, they'll be around Monday.
we may get a piece of mail Monday. I'm going to hope to connect with her again tomorrow, and I've asked if they tell us we don't have the extension, well then we're, already in default because we don't have anything ready and we were supposed to have it, you know, ready. The original deadline
We'll
was.
send them our copy.
I can have that, sure. But I do want to ask her, how does she want us to interact with them? How can we best organize that so that we can get the best information and have would it make sense for them to come down to be at one of our meetings or not? And do we need that? Or should we just ask questions by phone or by email or in writing? I mean, how do they want to work and figure that out? Because I think we're beginning to get a good list of questions that we'd like to have their input on.
And we're getting at some of the meatier issues. And what's happened is, again, this is the first of this type of withdrawals that's going on. And I think, not to beat up DOE, but I think much of this is, they're using the force as they go because they really don't have, they haven't made a ruling on how to answer some of these questions, I think. Because they largely took the SAD, divorce decree and substituted, RSU for it.
Right.
And those were constructed differently than these are.
The other thing we should keep in mind, I think, is if the two parties can agree on something that is the way they would like it to work. Hey there. That's all right.
That's okay.
Again.
Then we ought to figure a way to essentially write that up and then ask DOE to make it work, right? Because if we can figure the problems out, if we can figure out what we want to have happen, then the law is, this kind of law is there as kind of a set of guideposts, so we ought to be able to figure out how to make it happen if we think it's a reasonable thing and it meets all the sort of the criteria, which are basically that kids need to have a place to go to school and so forth. And then we ought to be able to make an agreement pass muster. And so the most important thing, again, returns to the responsibility of the two parties to come to an agreement that makes sense and works well for the communities as within the constraints of a withdrawal. So,
well, I think having that information from them about how they want us to communicate with them, and I think we might not just get them to commit to how they're going to answer, but if they're going to answer, because at some point along the way, and it's okay, they can tell us, that has yet to be determined, and which tells me that if the two parties can agree to it, then they should be able to accept it.
what's on the TV?
Nelson's up there.
Nelson, nice. He's everywhere.
Apparently that's inexpensive to run because they leave it on 24/7.
Right. So I think we'll have that communication with them. I'm sure that Paul and I will sync up tomorrow and we'll be able to hear about that, and I'll let you know what she says by email. I was just saying, Dennis, that we haven't heard back yet that have been granted an extension or not.
Oh, really?
And
it
so
like a certain thing, according to the paper. At least.
She left me a voicemail saying that they had processed our request and that we had a piece of mail waiting, that would be on its way to us, and she apologized because they were really busy. What she didn't leave on the voicemail was any indication that they had accepted our request or denied it, and where she sent the piece of mail to, because I don't think we as a body have an address at all, except for maybe in the care of town people.
Yeah, early on in this process, we had asked a question, and we weren't really sure. It took us a while to find the answer because they said they'd sent it, and we didn't know where. And I can't remember what the question was. I think it was before we even formed this committee. We'd asked them a question, and they said, "Well, we answered it."
Yeah. So hopefully we'll get to the bottom of that. Paul is a good person.
It's
I
a
think
slam dunk thing, isn't it?
What's that?
To get an extension?
I've been told it is.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason why they would deny it, but I'm sure it's going to be fine. We just need to get it.
Not only that, but with the change in the date, change in the requirement for the vote,
Yeah.
I just don't see this as being a.
Yeah, that's what I would think. That's what I concur.
I mean, it's far better we get the right answer than a quick answer.
Mhm.
Right.
So we're doing that. We were talking earlier, Dennis, about bringing attorneys or not, and I think we basically decided that everybody's nodding their heads about we would probably be willing, be ready to bring the attorneys. I thought I might have one more round back and forth with Michelle about it and see
See where they are.
if, where their head is at, and, if there's more that we can do without the attorneys, maybe we do it, but it seemed like that we could tighten or close the loop on some of the language changes that we weren't able to TA,
Yeah, yeah.
if the attorneys are in the room next time around. And then we spent, or before that, we went over the community visioning forum and
Yep, how that was going.
summarize that. Yeah.
I do have a question
Mhm.
around meetings, and I'm wondering if at some point, we have, these are kind of workshops and work meetings for us. Do you think it would be beneficial to meet informally in kind of a workshop type session where, rather than just speak with you and Michelle speaking,
Yeah.
spend a little bit of time hearing what everybody's thinking a little bit, and make it less formal. I don't think we do it as an executive session, but certainly, because I think there are some things people would like to say, and they really, you're only hearing the filtered version sometimes. And I don't know if that would be helpful or not. I mean, it's something you could talk to Michelle about a little, see if she has any interest.
I think it's,
And it-
I find it very difficult to negotiate with, on the record officially, because it's hard to brainstorm, think outside the box, try out the crazy ideas, when you're potentially holding up a lightning rod every time you do that.
There are times we see this in town council a lot of times. You're not willing to put it on the table, as a discussion item because people think you either support it or you're willing to do that.
Right.
And there are times when you put this on the table, just see how crazy that really looks.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if you have a less formal discussion, so you can do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can, you can move forward a little bit.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, actually, when I read the news article that was in this week's paper about the school of record. There's a considerable fuzziness around that definition.
Mhm. There is no definition.
Yeah, that's
It's not an official thing.
So you trip up over something that,
Mhm.
you ought to be more aware of what it really means, if it means anything.
Well, I think everybody in the room could agree that it means every child in the system needs to have a place to go for 10 years.
Yep.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that we have to do that,
That's
or
right.
they have to
That's
do
right.
it, or.
Can it be split? Can it be-
Now, the problem with the term school of record, and the reason I think that people are, school of record actually has a meaning in the educational system,
But not here.
But not.
but it doesn't mean this 10-year commitment, it
Yeah,
means something
yeah,
different.
yeah.
And so to use that phrase to describe this is muddying the water.
Right.
So the people that are kind of the
Right.
official people like the DOE are saying there's no such thing as a school of record thing. It's a 10-year contract to make sure that all the kids have a place to go.
And so if we could define it in terms of the parties that are negotiating, or.
I think that's one of the things that people are saying is that we may have to be leaders here. We can't necessarily rely on DOE to be the leaders and tell us how we should do it. We should say, here's what we want to do. We know that there needs to be a 10-year commitment for all the kids, and here's how we're accomplishing that, and here's why we're doing it this way, and we think this meets all the objectives of the law and all the requirements of the law, and therefore you ought to approve it. And DOE will give us feedback, and we'll have a discussion about it. But to say to the DOE, well, how do you want us to do that? Then they likely will not provide that leadership just because, in other words, and also they may give us an answer and we may not like the answer, right? So in a sense, we may be better off trying to figure it out. So we have to walk that line, and there are certain things where we need clarification from the DOE, and there are certain things where we need information from the DOE, and they're like, we need to know what the finances would look like, what the state subsidy would look like if we were standing alone.
Yeah.
Likewise, they'll need to know what their state subsidy will look like without Freeport in the mix. So we'll want to get those projections, and that's something that they need, that they can uniquely provide us. But as part of our financial analysis of this thing. So
It's along the same line of information. I'm not sure if it's a FOIA request or what have you for standalone budgets from Durham and Pownell before the consolidation. If we can get at least the last year or maybe 2 years, that would be helpful.
we need to get our own budget before we worry
Well,
about that.
I do have that last budget of ours.
But only at the high level one, right?
No, it actually has a lot of details, as
Okay.
much details as either current one does.
Okay.
Yeah, I brought a copy. You have a copy, I think I have a copy here too, I didn't know.
I'd like to see it. Do we have an electronic copy?
No, I don't, but I can make it in scan.
We can scan it.
Oh.
But not one that I can put into a spreadsheet though. I'm gonna have to type it. That's all right, I'll figure it out. So where were we? We're talking about DOE. We're gonna communicate with them. We'll figure out what the right situation is there. We thought we might do a quick executive session tonight to just kind of summarize where we are, get our thoughts in order in response to the legal work product that Dan has provided. So unless there's anything else we want to do on the record here, we should maybe move on to that.
I think that's all we need to talk about.
All right, so can I have a motion that we enter into executive session?
So move.
All right, and all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great, we'll take a quick break.
Guys.
Kick Jerry out,
Thank you.
shut the mic down.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys, bye-bye.